This is a film about an island that once upon a time was actually ruled by the French, but now owes its allegiance to the British Crown, although it is completely self-governing. Jersey is really quite a small island, only 9 by 5 miles in fact, but it's the largest of the Channel Islands and has a tremendously varied landscape of fields, winding lanes, and a spectacular coastline. The first traces of civilization here were found in the sea caves, and for 6,000 years, the island has been occupied by many different races and cultures. For centuries, the island was a natural target for seaborne invaders, but the British mainland was at least a 2-day voyage away, and so it was the French who crossed 14 miles of water to establish Jersey's laws, language, and traditions. But now, Britain is only a few hours away by sea, and just under an hour by air. For thousands of years, people have made their mark on the island, and in Jersey, wherever the present is, there the past is also. This landscape has been shaped over millions of years. Wind and water have worked their way on granite and sandstone, carving out huge caves reaching back from the sea, grinding and powdering rock to sand, which we now enjoy, but which will once more settle below the sea to rise again 1,000,000 years from now. Compared with all this, man's appearance is but a flashpoint in time. But he came to the west coast and settled below the pinnacle, building a shelter and a temple of stones, both here and in other places on the island. The early Celtic races built these huge stone monuments, and even today, their real purpose remains a mystery. The Hoog Bee chamber is at least 5,000 years old. It's one of the best examples in Europe, and yet it was only discovered in 1924. This solid gold torque may once have adorned a woman's neck, whilst polished axes like this were for hunting and ritual. The crossed axes of St. Heliers parish commemorate an event that dates back to the 6th century. On a small island near the town of St. Helier stands Elizabeth Castle and its close neighbour, the Hermitage. For 15 years, a hermit lived at the top of this rock, spending his time in meditation and prayer and becoming something of a miracle worker for the people of Jersey. Legend tells us that a band of Saxons came to the rock attracted by the flocks of birds, but finding no treasure there, attacked the hermit, cutting off his head, but the saint simply picked it up and walked away to the sea. Now, every mid-July, on the anniversary of his death, the people of the town named after him come to the rock in remembrance of their saint. This small chapel was built some 600 years after his death, on the actual spot where he lived, sheltered beneath an overhanging rock. As a symbol of remembrance, a wreath of Jersey flowers is taken up to the hermit's cell by the dean and constable of the parish, a symbol which is by now a far cry from the island's more violent past. The island is famous for its flowers, for its coastline of high cliffs and sandy beaches. It draws people to it now as it drew St. Helier so many centuries ago. The island slopes downwards from the northern cliffs to the beaches and coves of the south. At La Moy, rocks were quarried to line the Thames embankment, while Beauport and St. Brolard's Bays were ideal for the brandy smugglers of the early 19th century. And at Portlet, prehistoric man once shaped flint arrowheads and made his stone axes. Summer begins early here. Nature has been kind to the island. So it's hardly surprising that we of the 20th century have learned to appreciate fully the island's natural beauty. The island has its own currency and its own postal service. One issue of Jersey stamps drew inspiration from the 12 parishes. Throughout the island, 400 miles of roads and lanes weave amongst the parishes. Roads which, not so long ago, were simple trackways carrying carts between farm and village. Each parish is dedicated to a saint. St. Brolard's is the oldest church here and was founded by Brendan, patron saint of navigators. In the old days, a path ran from every church to the sea, offering a sanctuary for the criminal, as long as he could find someone to take him off the island by boat. But for the law-abiding, the parish church remains the focal point for what is largely an agricultural community. With their quadrangles and granite arches, Jersey farms are unique. This one is owned by the Jersey National Trust. Once, almost the whole island was covered with apple trees, the fruit was gathered by families who pulped it in cider crushers like this, making a powerful drink to last the year through. Of course, it's the Jersey cow that really takes pride of place here. At the last count, there were about 5,000 of them on the island, all purebred champion milk producers, sold throughout the world and kept on the small farms held by Jersey families for many generations. The age of steam has given way to diesel fuel. But some farms have changed very little, and every field on Jersey has its own name. Over 1,000 years ago, the Normans introduced the feudal system, which granted lands and manors to the favourites of the king. This house has seen the comings and goings of politicians, priests and kings in their passage through time and history. The seigneur, or squire, of Trinity still lives here and hopes that with care and good fortune, his manor will remain for many years to come. Of course, the manors, their lands and villages had to be defended, especially in the 13th century when Jersey pledged allegiance to the English crown. Elizabeth Castle was built to withstand a French invasion. 400 years ago, this beach was a battleground dominated by Mont Orgueil or Mount Pride, one of the best examples of a medieval castle. For 5 centuries, it was both a fortress and a home for the governors of Jersey. A vast modern leisure centre now covers Fort Regent, which overlooks St Helier. It was completed at the turn of the 19th century, but ironically was never used against an invader. Since then, a new role has been found for it. The town below remains the centre of island life, and not so long ago, carts came from the countryside laden with new potatoes. They were weighed at St Heliers harbour, ready for shipping to markets overseas. Jersey is lucky with its weather. A warm Gulf Stream flows near the island, bringing an early season for all kinds of crops, fruit, vegetables and flowers. And the central market has always been a rendezvous for both islanders and visitors.
Oui, mais c'est pas ça. Ça perd pas, non. Tu sais, regarde, il y a 3 ans.
We could get some tomatoes, they look Yeah, I think we'll need some potatoes as well. And,
I think I'll get 6 pounds.
right, yeah, great.
With the other Channel Islands, Jersey is the oldest possession of the English Crown, being governed by the States of Jersey. They govern the island from the States Chamber, overlooking Royal Square. This was the town marketplace, but by the end of the 18th century it became so noisy it just had to move, as no one in the courthouse could make themselves heard. The market sold produce not only from the farms, but from the sea. Over 300 years ago, a new industry began to flourish because Jersey fishermen needed to keep warm on their long trips to the Arctic seas, and so the knitting industry began. Almost half the islanders, including the men, went at their newfound profitable pastime with a relish. In fact, Elizabeth I was said to have worn Jersey stocks wrought about the clocks with silver. But so many islanders were leaving the fields, preferring to take up needles and wool, that a law was passed forbidding it to anyone over the age of 15. Today, many islanders prefer to hunt for lobsters, abandoning needle and wool for ropes and a winch. Of the many famous islanders, Lily Langtry was surely the most beautiful. She was born in the rectory of St Saviour's, and from there launched herself into high society, becoming the favourite of a king. She is buried near her birthplace, returned now to the island whose colours and moods she loved best.